and sucklings. I am that man, the sum of him, the all of him, the hairless bipt who struggled upward from the slime and created love and law out of the anarchy of fecund life that screamed and squalled in the jungle. I am all that that man was and did become. I see myself, through the painful generations, snaring and killing the game and the fish, clearing the first fields from the forest, making rude tools of stone and bone, building houses of wood, thatching the roofs with leaves and straw, domesticating the wild grasses and meadow roots, fathering them to become the progenitors of rice and millet and wheat and barley and all manner of succulent edibles, learning to scratch the soil, to sow, to reap, to store, beating out the fibers of plants to spin into thread and to weave into cloth, devising systems of irrigation, working in metals, making markets and trade routes, building boats and founding navigation and organizing village life, welding villages to villages till they became tribes, welding tribes together till they became nations, ever seeking the laws of things, ever making the laws of humans so that humans might live together in amity and by united effort beat down and destroy all manner of creeping, crawling, squalling things that might else destroy them. I was that man in all his births and endeavors. I am that man today, waiting my due death by the law that I helped to devise many 1,000 years ago, and by which I have died many times before this, many times. And as I contemplate this vast past history of me, I find several great and splendid influences. And, chiefest of these, the love of woman, man's love for the woman of his kind. I see myself, the one man, the lover, always the lover. Yes, also was I the great fighter, but somehow it seems to me as I sit here and evenly balance it all, that I was, more than aught else, the great lover. It was because I loved greatly that I was the great fighter. Sometimes I think that the story of man is the story of the love of woman. This memory of all my past that I write now is the memory of my love of woman. Ever. In the 10,000 lives and guises, I loved her. I love her now. My sleep is fraught with her, my waking fancies, no matter whence they start, lead me always to her. There is no escaping her, that eternal, splendid, ever resplendent figure of woman. Oh, make no mistake. I am no callow, ardent youth. I am an elderly man, broken in health and body, and soon to die. I am a scientist and a philosopher. As all the generations of philosophers before me, know woman for what she is, her weaknesses and meannesses and immodesties and ignobilities, her earthbound feet, and her eyes that have never seen the stars. But and the everlasting, irrefragable fact remains, her feet are beautiful, her eyes are beautiful, her arms and breasts are paradise, her charm is potent beyond all charm that has ever dazzled men, and, as the pole willy-nilly draws the needle, just so, willy-nilly, does she draw men. Woman has made me laugh at death and distance, scorn fatigue and sleep. I have slain men, many men, for love of woman, or in warm blood have baptized our nuptials or washed away the stain of her favor to another. I have gone down to death and dishonor, my betrayal of my comrades and of the stars black upon me. For woman's sake, for my sake, rather, I desired her so. And I have lain in the barley, sick with yearning for her, just to see her pass and glut my eyes with the swaying wonder of her and of her hair, black with the night, or brown or flaxen, or all golden dusty with the sun. For woman is beautiful to man. She is sweet to his tongue, and fragrance in his nostrils. She is fire in his blood, and a thunder of trumpets. Her voice is beyond all music in his ears, and she can shake his soul that else stands steadfast in the drafty presence of the titans of the light and of the dark. And beyond his stargazing, in his far-imagined heavens, Valkyrie or Houri, man has fain made place for her, for he could see no heaven without her. And the sword, in battle, sings not so sweet a song as the woman sings. To man merely by her laugh in the moonlight, or her love sob in the dark, or by her swaying on her way under the sun while he lies dizzy with longing in the grass. I have died of love. I have died for love, as you shall see. In a little while. They will take me out, me, Daryl standing, and make me die. And that death shall be for love. Oh, not lightly was I stirred when I slew Professor Haskell. In the laboratory at the University of California. He was a man. I was a man. And there was a woman beautiful. Do you understand? She was a woman and I was a man and a lover, and all the heredity of love was mine up from the black and squalling jungle air. Love was love and man was man. Oh, it is nothing new. Often, in that long past have I given life and honor, place, and power for love. Man is different from woman. She is close to the immediate and knows only the need of instant things. We know honor above her honor, and pride beyond her wildest guess of pride. Our eyes are far visioned for stargazing, while her eyes see no farther than the solid earth beneath her feet, the lover's breast upon her breast, the infant lusty in the hollow of her arm. And yet, such is our alchemy compounded of the ages, woman works magic in our dreams and in our veins, so that more than dreams and far visions and the blood of life itself is woman to us, who, as lovers truly say, is more than all the world. Yet is this just, else would man not be man, the fighter and the conqueror, treading his red way on the face of all other and lesser life. For, had man not been the lover, the royal lover, he could never have become the kingly fighter. We fight best, and die best, and live best, for what we love. I am that one man. I see myself the many selves that have gone into the constituting of me. And ever I see the woman, the many women, who have made me and undone me, who have loved me and whom I have loved. I remember, oh, long ago when humankind was very young, that I made me a snare and a pit with a pointed stake upthrust in the middle thereof, for the taking of Saber-tooth. Saber-tooth, long-fanged and long-haired, was the chiefest peril to us of the squatting place, who crouched through the nights over our fires and by day increased the growing shell bank beneath us by the clams we dug and devoured from the salt mud flats beside us. And when the roar and the squall of Saber-tooth roused us where we squatted by our dying embers, and I was wild with far vision of the proof of the pit and the stake, it was the woman, arms about me, leg twining, who fought with me and restrained me not to go out through the dark to my desire. She was part clad, for warmth only, in skins of animals, mangy and fire-burnt, that I had slain. She was swart and dirty with camp smoke, unwashed since the spring rains, with nails gnarled and broken, and hands that were calloused like footpads and were more like claws than like hands, but her eyes were blue as the summer sky is, as the deep sea is, and there was that in her eyes, and in her clasped arms about me, and in her heart beating against mine, that withheld me though through the dark until dawn, while Saber-tooth squalled his wrath and his agony. I could hear my comrades snickering and sniggling to their women in that I had not the faith in my emprise and invention to venture through the night to the pit and the stake I had devised for the undoing of Saber-tooth. But my woman, my savage maid held me, savage that I was, and her eyes drew me, and her arms chained me, and her twining legs and heart beating to mine seduced me from my far dream of things, my man's achievement, the goal beyond goals, the taking and the slaying of Saber-tooth on the stake in the pit. Once I was Ushu, the archer. I remember it well. For I was lost from my own people, through the great forest, till I emerged on the flat lands and grass lands, and was taken in by a strange people, kin in that their skin was white, their hair yellow, their speech not too remote from mine. And she was Agar, and I drew her as I sang in the twilight, for she was destined a race mother, and she was broad-built and full-dugged, and she could not but draw to the man. Heavy-muscled, deep-chested, who sang of his prowess in manslaying and in meat-getting, and so, promised food and protection to her in her weakness, whilst she mothered the seed that was to hunt the meat and live after her. And these people knew not the wisdom of my people, in that they snared and pitted their meat and in battle used clubs and stone-throwing sticks and were unaware of the virtues of arrows swift flying, notched on the end to fit the thong of deer sinew, well twisted, that sprang into straightness when released, to the spring of the ask stick bent in the middle. And while I sang, the stranger men laughed in the twilight. And only she, Agar, believed and had faith in me. I took her alone to the hunting, where the deer sought the water hole. And my bow twanged and sang in the covert, and the deer fell fast stricken, and the warm meat was sweet to us, and she was mine there, by the water hole. And because of Agar I remained with the strange men. And I taught them the making of bows from the red and sweet-smelling wood like unto cedar. And I taught them to keep both eyes open, and to aim with the left eye, and to make blunt shafts for small game, and pronged shafts of bone for the fish in the clear water, and to flake arrowheads from obsidian for the deer and the wild horse, the elk, and old saber-tooth. But the flaking of stone they laughed at, till I shot an elk through and through, the flake stone standing out and beyond, the feathered shaft sunk in its vitals, the whole tribe applauding. I was Ushu, the archer, and Agar was my woman and mate. We laughed under the sun in the morning, when our man-child and woman-child, yellowed like honey bees, sprawled and rolled in the mustard, and at night she lay close in my arms, and loved me, and urged me, because of my skill at the seasoning of woods and the flaking of arrowheads, that I should stay close by the camp and let the other men bring to me the meat from the perils of hunting. And I listened, and grew fat and short-breathed, and in the long nights, unsleeping, worried that the men of the stranger tribe brought me meat for my wisdom and honor, but laughed at my fatness and undesire for the hunting and fighting. And in my old age, when our sons were man-grown and our daughters were mothers, when up from the southland the dark men, flat-browed, kinky-headed, surged like waves of the sea upon us, and we fled back before them to the hill slopes, Agar, like my mates far before and long after, leg-twining, arm-clasping, unseeing far visions, strove to hold me aloof from the battle. And I tore myself from her, fat and short-breathed, while she wept that no longer I loved her, and I went out to the night fighting and done fighting, where, to the singing of bowstrings and the shrilling of arrows, feathered, sharp-pointed, we showed them, the kinky heads, the skill of the killing and taught them the wit and the willing of slaughter. And as I died there at the end of the fighting, there were death songs and singing about me, and the songs seemed to sing as these the words I have written when I was Ushu, the archer, and Agar, my mate woman, leg twining, arm clasping, would have held me back from the battle. Once, and heaven alone knows when, save that it was in the long ago when man was young, we lived beside great swamps, where the hills drew down close to the wide, sluggish river, and where our women gathered berries and roots, and there were herds of deer, of wild horses, of antelope, and of elk, that we men slew with arrows or trapped in the pits or hill pockets. From the river we caught fish in nets twisted by the women of the bark of young trees. I was a man, eager and curious as the antelope when we lured it by waving grass clumps where we lay hidden in the thick of the grass. The wild rice grew in the swamp, rising sheer from the water on the edges of the channels. Each morning, the blackbirds awoke us with their chatter as they left their roosts to fly to the swamp, and through the long twilight the air was filled with their noise as they went back to their roosts. It was the time that the rice ripened. And there were ducks also, and ducks and blackbirds feasted to fatness on the ripe rice half unhusked by the sun. Being a man, ever restless, ever questing, wondering always what lay beyond the hills and beyond the swamps and in the mud at the river's bottom, I watched the wild ducks and blackbirds and pondered till my pondering gave me vision and I saw. And this is what I saw, the reasoning of it. Meat was good to eat. In the end, tracing it back, or at the first, rather, all meat came from grass. The meat of the duck and of the blackbird came from the seed of the swamp rice. To kill a duck with an arrow scarce paid for the labor of stalking and the long hours in hiding. The blackbirds were too small for arrow killing save by the boys who were learning and preparing for the taking of larger game. And yet, in rice season, blackbirds and ducks were succulently fat. Their fatness came from the rice. Why should I and mine not be fat from the rice in the same way? And I thought it out in camp, silent, morose, while the children squabbled about me unnoticed, and while Arunga, my mate woman, vainly scolded me and urged me to go hunting for more meat for the many of us. Arunga was the woman I had stolen from the hill tribes. She and I had been a dozen moons in learning common speech after I captured her. Ah, that day when I leaped upon her, down from the overhanging tree branch as she patted the runway. Fairly upon her shoulders with the weight of my body I smote her, my fingers wide spreading to clutch her. She squalled like a cat there in the runway. She fought me and bit me. The nails of her hands were like the claws of a tree cat as they tore at me. But I held her and mastered her, and for 2 days beat her and forced her to travel with me down out of the canyons of the hillmen to the grasslands where the river flowed through the rice swamps and the ducks and the blackbirds fed fat. I saw my vision when the rice was ripe. I put Arunga in the bow of the fire-hollowed log that was most rudely a canoe. I bade her paddle. In the stern, I spread a deerskin she had tanned. With 2 stout sticks I bent the stalks over the deerskin and threshed out the grain that else the blackbirds would have eaten. And when I had worked out the way of it, I gave the 2 stout sticks to Arunga, and sat in the bow paddling and directing. In the past we had eaten the raw rice in passing and not been pleased with it. But now we parched it over our fire so that the grains puffed and exploded in whiteness and all the tribe came running to taste. After that we became known among men as the rice eaters and as the sons of the rice. And long, long after, when we were driven by the sons of the river from the swamps into the uplands, we took the seed of the rice with us and planted it. We learned to select the largest grains for the seed, so that all the rice we thereafter ate was larger grained and puffier in the parching and the boiling. But Arunga, I have said she squalled and scratched like a cat when I stole her. Yet I remember the time when her own kin of the hill men caught me and carried me away into the hills. They were her father, his brother, and her 2 own blood brothers. But she was mine, who had lived with me. And at night, where I lay bound like a wild pig for the slaying, and they slept weary by the fire, she crept upon them and brained them with the war club that with my hands I had fashioned. And she wept over me, and loosed me, and fled with me, back to the wide sluggish river where the blackbirds and wild ducks fed in the rice swamps, for this was before the time of the coming of the sons of the river. For she was Arunga, the one woman, the eternal woman. She has lived in all times and places. She will always live. She is immortal. Once, in a far land, her name was Ruth. Also has her name been Iseult, and Helen, Pocahontas, and Unga. And no stranger man, from stranger tribes, but has found her and will find her in the tribes of all the earth. I remember so many women who have gone into the becoming of the one woman. There was the time that Har, my brother, and I, sleeping and pursuing in turn, ever hounding the wild stallion through the daytime and night, and in a wide circle that met where the sleeping one lay, drove the stallion unresting through hunger and thirst to the meekness of weakness, so that in the end he could but stand and tremble while we bound him with ropes twisted of deer hide. On our legs alone, without hardship, aided merely by wit, the plan was mine. My brother and I walked that fleet-footed creature into possession. And when all was ready for me to get on his back, for that had been my vision from the first, Selpa, my woman, put her arms about me, and raised her voice and persisted that Har, and not I, should ride, for Har had neither wife nor young ones and could die without hurt. Also, in the end she wept, so that I was raped of my vision, and it was Har, naked and clinging, that best rode the stallion when he vaulted away. It was sunset, and a time of great wailing, when they carried Har in from the far rocks where they found him. His head was quite broken, and like honey from a fallen bee tree his brains dripped on the ground. His mother strewed wood ashes on her head and blackened her face. His father cut off half the fingers of one hand in token of sorrow. And all the women, especially the young and unwed, screamed evil names at me, and the elders shook their wise heads, and muttered and mumbled that not their fathers nor their fathers' fathers had betrayed such a madness. Horse meat was good to eat, young colts were tender to old teeth, and only a fool would come to close grapples with any wild horse save when an arrow had pierced it, or when it struggled on the stake in the midst of the pit. And Selpa scolded me to sleep, and in the morning woke me with her chatter, ever declaiming against my madness, ever pronouncing her claim upon me and the claims of our children, till in the end I grew weary, and forsook my far vision, and said never again would I dream of best riding the wild horse to fly swift as its feet and the wind across the sands and the grasslands. And through the years the tale of my madness never ceased from being told over the campfire. Yet was the very telling the source of my vengeance, for the dream did not die, and the young ones, listening to the laugh and the sneer, redreamed it, so that in the end it was Uther, my eldest born, himself a sheer stripling, that walked down a wild stallion, leapt on its back, and flew before all of us with the speed of the wind. Thereafter, that they might keep up with him, all men were trapping and breaking wild horses. Many horses were broken, and some men, but I lived at the last to the day when, at the changing of campsites in the pursuit of the meat in its seasons, our very babes, in baskets of willow withes, were slung side and side on the backs of our horses that carried our camp trappage and dunnage. I, a young man, had seen my vision, dreamed my dream. Selpa, the woman, had held me from that far desire, but Uther, the seed of us to live after, glimpsed my vision and won to it, so that our tribe became wealthy in the gains of the chase. There was a woman on the great drift down out of Europe, a weary drift of many generations, when we brought into India the shorthorn cattle and the planting of barley. But this woman was long before we reached India. We were Still in the midmost of that centuries long drift, and no shrewdness of geography can now place for me that ancient valley. The woman was Nuhila. The valley was narrow, not long, and the swift slope of its floor and the steep walls of its rim were terraced for the growing of rice. And of millet the first rice and millet we sons of the mountain had known. They were a meek people in that valley. They had become soft with the farming of fat land made fatter by water. Theirs was the first irrigation we had seen, although we had little time to mark their ditches and channels by which all the hill waters flowed to the fields they had builded. We had little time to mark, for we sons of the mountain, who were few, were in flight before the sons of the snub-nose, who were many. We called them the noseless, and they called themselves the sons of the eagle. But they were many, and we fled before them with our shorthorn cattle, our goats, and our barley seed, our women and children. While the snub-noses slew our youths at the rear, we slew at our fore the folk of the valley who opposed us and were weak. The village was mud-built and grass-thatched, the encircling wall was of mud, but quite tall. And when we had slain the people who had built the wall, and sheltered within it our herds and our women and children, we stood on the wall and shouted insult to the snub-noses. For we had found the mud granaries filled with rice and millet. Our cattle could eat the thatches. And the time of the rains was at hand, so that we should not want for water. It was a long siege. Near to the beginning, we gathered together the women, and elders, and children we had not slain, and forced them out through the wall they had builded. But the snub-noses slew them to the last one, so that there was more food in the village for us, more food in the valley for the snub-noses. It was a weary long siege. Sickness smote us, and we died of the plague that arose from our buried ones. We emptied the mud granaries of their rice and millet. Our goats and shorthorns ate the thatch of the houses, and we, ere the end, ate the goats and the shorthorns. Where there had been 5 men of us on the wall, there came a time when there was one, where there had been 500 babes and younglings of ours. There were none. It was Nuhila, my woman, who cut off her hair and twisted it, that I might have a strong string for my bow. The other women did likewise, and when the wall was attacked, stood shoulder to shoulder with us, in the midst of our spears and arrows raining down potsherds and cobblestones on the heads of the snub-noses. Even the patient snub-noses we well nigh outpatienced. Came a time when of 10 men of us, but one was alive on the wall, and of our women remained very few. And the snub-noses held parley. They told us we were a strong breed, and that our women were men-mothers, and that if we would let them have our women they would leave us alone in the valley to possess for ourselves, and that we could get women from the valleys to the south. And Nuhila said no. And the other women said no. And we sneered at the snub-noses and asked if they were weary of fighting. And we were as dead men. Then, as we sneered at our enemies, and there was little fight left in us, we were so weak. One more attack on the wall would end us. We knew it. Our women knew it. And Nuhila said that we could end it first and outwit the snub-noses. And all our women agreed. And while the snub-noses prepared for the attack that would be final, there, on the wall, we slew our women. Nuhila loved me, and leaned to meet the thrust of my sword, there on the wall. And we men, in the love of tribehood and tribesmen, slew one another till remained only Horda and I alive in the red of the slaughter. And Horda was my elder, and I leaned to his thrust. But not at once did I die. I was the last of the sons of the mountain, for I saw Horda himself fall on his blade and pass quickly. and dying with the shouts of the oncoming snub-noses growing dim in my ears, I was glad that the snub-noses would have no sons of us to bring up by our women. I do not know when this time was when I was a son of the mountain and when we died in the narrow valley where we had slain the sons of the rice and the millet. I do not know, save that it was centuries before the wide-spreading drift of all us sons of the mountain fetched into India, and that it was long before ever I was an Aryan master in old Egypt building my 2 burial places, and defacing the tombs of kings before me. I should like to tell more of those far days, but time in the present is short. Soon I shall pass. Yet am I sorry that I cannot tell more of those early drifts, when there was crushage of peoples, or descending ice sheets, or migrations of meat. Also, I should like to tell of mystery. For always were we curious to solve the secrets of life, death, and decay. Unlike the other animals, man was forever gazing at the stars. Many gods he created in his own image and in the images of his fancy. In those old times I have worshipped the sun and the dark. I have worshipped the husked grain as the parent of life. I have worshipped Sar, the corn goddess. And I have worshipped sea gods, and river gods, and fish gods. Yes, and I remember Ishtar ere she was stolen from us by the Babylonians, and Ea, too, was ours, supreme in the underworld, who enabled Ishtar to conquer death. Mitra, likewise, was a good old Aryan god, ere he was filched from us or we discarded him. And I remember, on a time, long after the drift when we brought the barley into India, that I came down into India, a horse trader, with many servants and a long caravan at my back, and that at that time they were worshipping Bodhisattva. Truly, the worships of the mystery wandered as did men, and between filchings and borrowings the gods had as vagabond a time of it as did we. As the Sumerians took the loan of Shamash-Napishtim from us, so did the sons of Shem take him from the Sumerians and call him Noah. Why, I smile me today, Darrell standing, in Murderer's Row, in that I was found guilty and awarded death by 12 jurymen staunch and true. 12 has ever been a magic number of the mystery. Nor did it originate with the 12 tribes of Israel. Stargazers before them had placed the 12 signs of the zodiac in the sky. And I remember me, when I was of the Asur, and of the Vanir, that Odin sat in judgment over men in the court of the 12 gods, and that their names were Thor, Baldur, Njord, Frey, Tyr, Brigi, Heimdall, Hodur, Vidar, Yule, Forseti, and Loki. Even our Valkyries were stolen from us and made into angels, and the wings of the Valkyries' horses became attached to the shoulders of the angels. And our Helheim of that day of ice and frost has become the hell of today, which is so hot an abode that the blood boils in one's veins, while with us, in our Helheim, the place was so cold as to freeze the marrow inside the bones. And the very sky, that we dreamed enduring, eternal, has drifted and veered, so that we find today the scorpion in the place where of old we knew the goat, and the archer in the place of the crab. Worships and worships. Ever the pursuit of the mystery. I remember the lame god of the Greeks, the master smith. But their Vulcan was the Germanic Wieland, the master smith captured and hamstrung lame of a leg by Nidung, the kind of the Nids. But before that he was our master smith, our forger and hammerer, whom we named Ilmarinen. And him we begot of our fancy, giving him the bearded sun god for father, and nursing him by the stars of the bear. For, he, Vulcan, or Wieland, or Ilmarinen, was born under the pine tree, from the hair of the wolf, and was called also the bear father ere ever the Germans and Greeks purloined and worshipped him. In that day we called ourselves the sons of the bear and the sons of the wolf, and the bear and the wolf were our totems. That was before our drift south, on which we joined with the sons of the tree grove, and taught them our totems and tales. Yes, and who was Kashyapa, who was Pururavas, but our lame mastersmith, our iron worker, carried by us in our drifts and renamed and worshipped by the south dwellers and the east dwellers, the sons of the pole and of the fire. Drill and fire socket. But the tale is too long, though I should like to tell of the three-leaved herb of life by which Sigmund made Sinfiati alive again. For this is the very Soma plant of India, the holy grail of King Arthur, the but enough. Enough. And yet, as I calmly consider it all, I conclude that the greatest thing in life, in all lives, to me and to all men, has been woman, is woman, and will be woman so long as the stars drift in the sky and the heavens flux eternal change. Greater than our toil and endeavor, the play of invention and fancy, battle and stargazing and mystery, greatest of all has been woman. Even though she has sung false music to me, and kept my feet solid on the ground, and drawn my star-roving eyes ever back to gaze upon her, she, the conserver of life, the earth mother, has given me my great days and nights and fullness of years. Even mystery have I imaged in the form of her, and in my star charting have I placed her figure in the sky. All my toils and devices led to her, all my far visions saw her at the end. When I made the fire drill and fire socket, it was for her. It was for her. Although I did not know it, that I put the stake in the pit for old Saber-tooth, tamed the horse, slew the mammoth, and herded my reindeer south in advance of the ice sheet. For her I harvested the wild rice, tamed the barley, the wheat, and the corn. For her, and the seed to come after whose image she bore, I have died in tree-tops and stood long sieges in cave mouths and on mud walls. For her I put the 12 signs in the sky. It was she I worshipped when I bowed before the 10 stones of jade and adored them as the moons of gestation. Always has woman crouched close to earth like a partridge hen mothering her young, always has my wantonness of roving led me out on the shining ways, and always have my star paths returned me to her, the figure everlasting, the woman, the one woman, for whose arms I had such need that clasped in them I have forgotten the stars. For her I accomplished odysseys, scaled mountains, crossed deserts, for her I led the hunt and was forward in battle, and for her and to her I sang my songs of the things I had done. All ecstasies of life and rhapsodies of delight have been mine because of her. And here, at the end, I can say that I have known no sweeter, deeper madness of being than to drown in the fragrant glory and forgetfulness of her hair. One word more. I remember me Dorothy, just the other day, when I still lectured on agronomy to farmer boy students. She was 11 years old. Her father was dean of the college. She was a woman child, and a woman, and she conceived that she loved me. And I smiled to myself, for my heart was untouched and lay elsewhere. Yet was the smile tender, for in the child's eyes I saw the woman eternal, the woman of all times and appearances. In her eyes I saw the eyes of my mate of the jungle and tree-top, of the cave and the squatting place. In her eyes I saw the eyes of Agar when I was Usha the archer, the eyes of Arunga when I was the rice harvester, the eyes of Selpa when I dreamed of best riding the stallion, the eyes of Nuhaila who leaned to the thrust of my sword. Yes, there was that in her eyes that made them the eyes of Lele whom I left with a laugh on my lips, the eyes of the Lady Om for 40 years my beggar mate on highway and byway, the eyes of Philippa for whom I was slain on the grass in old France, the eyes of my mother when I was the lad Jesse at the mountain meadows in the circle of our 40 great wagons. She was a woman child, but she was daughter of all women, as her mother before her, and she was the mother of all women to come after her. She was Sar, the corn goddess. She was Isthar who conquered death. She was Sheba and Cleopatra. She was Esther and Herodias. She was Mary the Madonna, and Mary the Magdalene. And Mary the sister of Martha, also she was Martha. And she was Brunhilde. And Guinevere, Iseult, and Juliet, Heloise and Nicolette. Yes, and she was Eve, she was Lilith, she was Astarte. She was 11 years old, and she was all women that had been, all women to be. I sit in my cell now, while the flies hum in the drowsy summer afternoon, and I know that my time is short. Soon they will apparel me in the shirt without a collar. But hush, my heart. The spirit is immortal. After the dark I shall live again, and there will be women. The future holds the little women for me in the lives I am yet to live. And though the stars drift, and the heavens lie, ever remains woman, resplendent, eternal, the one woman, as I, under all my masquerades and misadventures, am the one man, her mate. Chapter XXII. My time grows very short. All the manuscript I have written is safely smuggled out of the prison. There is a man I can trust who will see that it is published. No longer am I in Murderer's Row. I am writing these lines in the death cell, and the death watch is set on me. Night and day is this death watch on me, and its paradoxical function is to see that I do not die. I must be kept alive for the hanging, or else will the public be cheated, the law blackened, and a mark of demerit placed against the time-serving warden who runs this prison, and one of whose duties is to see that his condemned ones are duly and properly hanged. Often I marvel at the strange way some men make their livings. This shall be my last writing. Tomorrow morning the hour is set. The governor has declined to pardon or reprieve, despite the fact that the Anti-Capital Punishment League has raised quite a stir in California. The reporters are gathered like so many buzzards. I have seen them all. They are queer young fellows, most of them, and most queer is it that they will thus earn bread and butter, cocktails and tobacco, room rent, and, if they are married, shoes and school books for their children, by witnessing the execution of Professor Darrell Standing, and by describing for the public how Professor Darrell Standing died at the end of a rope. Ah, well, they will be sicker then. I at the end of the affair. As I sit here and muse on it all, the footfalls of the death watch going up and down outside my cage, the man's suspicious eyes ever peering in on me. Almost I weary of eternal recurrence. I have lived so many lives. I weary of the endless struggle and pain and catastrophe that come to those who sit in the high places, tread the shining ways, and wander among the stars. Almost I hope, when next I reign habit form, that it shall be that of a peaceful farmer. There is my dream farm. I should like to engage just for one whole life in that. Oh, my dream farm. My alfalfa meadows, my efficient Jersey cattle, my upland pastures, my brush-covered slopes melting into tilled fields, while ever higher up the slopes my Angora goats eat away brush to tillage. There is a basin there, a natural basin high up the slopes, with a generous watershed on 3 sides. I should like to throw a dam across the 4th side, which is surprisingly narrow. At a paltry price of labor I could impound 20 million gallons of water. For, see, one great drawback to farming in California is our long dry summer. This prevents the growing of cover crops. And the sensitive soil, naked, a mere surface dust mulch, has its humus burned out of it by the sun. Now with that dam I could grow 3 crops a year. Observing due rotation, and be able to turn under a wealth of green manure. I have just endured a visit from the warden. I say endured advisedly. He is quite different from the warden of San Quintin. He was very nervous, and perforce I had to entertain him. This is his first hanging. He told me so. And I, with a clumsy attempt at wit, did not reassure him when I explained that it was also my first hanging. He was unable to laugh. He has a girl in high school, and his boy is a freshman at Stanford. He has no income. Outside his salary, his wife is an invalid, and he is worried in that he has been rejected by the life insurance doctors as an undesirable risk. Really, the man told me almost all his troubles. Had I not diplomatically terminated the interview, he would still be here telling me the remainder of them. My last 2 years in San Quintin were very gloomy and depressing. Ed Morel, by one of the wildest freaks of chance, was taken out of solitary and made head trustee of the whole prison. This was Al Hutchins' old job, and it carried a graft of $3,000 a year. To my misfortune, Jake Oppenheimer, who had rotted in solitary for so many years, turned sour on the world, on everything. For 8 months he refused to talk even to me. In prison, news will travel. Give it time and it will reach dungeon and solitary cell. It reached me, at last, that Cecil Winwood, the poet forger, the snitcher, the coward, and the stool, was returned for a fresh forgery. It will be remembered that it was the Cecil Winwood who concocted the fairy story that I had changed the plant of the non-existent dynamite, and who was responsible for the 5 years I had then spent in solitary. I decided to kill Cecil Winwood. You see, Morel was gone, and Oppenheimer, until the outbreak that finished him, had remained in the silence. Solitary had grown monotonous for me. I had to do something. So I remembered back to the time when I was Adam Strang and patiently nursed revenge for 40 years. What he had done I could do if once I locked my hands on Cecil Winwood's throat. It cannot be expected of me to divulge how I came into possession of the 4 needles. They were small cambric needles. Emaciated as my body was, I had to saw 4 bars, each in 2 places, in order to make an aperture through which I could squirm. I did it. I used up 1 needle to each bar. This meant 2 cuts to a bar, and it took a month to a cut. Thus I should have been 8 months in cutting my way out. Unfortunately, I broke my last needle on the last bar, and I had to wait 3 months before I could get another needle. But I got it, and I got out. I regret greatly that I did not get Cecil Winwood. I had calculated well on everything save one thing. The certain chance to find Winwood would be in the dining room at dinner hour. So I waited until Pie-Face Jones, the sleepy guard, should be on shift at the noon hour. At that time I was the only inmate of solitary, so that Pie-Face Jones was quickly snoring. I removed my bars, squeezed out, stole past him along the ward, opened the door and was free to a portion of the inside of the prison. And here was the one thing I had not calculated on myself. I had been 5 years in solitary. I was hideously weak. I weighed 87 pounds. I was half blind. And I was immediately stricken with agoraphobia. I was affrighted by spaciousness. 5 years in narrow walls had unfit me for the enormous declivity of the stairway, for the vastitude of the prison yard. The descent of that stairway I consider the most heroic exploit I ever accomplished. The yard was deserted. The blinding sun blazed down on it. Thrice I essayed to cross it, but my senses reeled and I shrank back to the wall for protection. Again, summoning all my courage, I attempted it. But my poor blear eyes, like a bat's, startled me at my shadow on the flagstones. I attempted to avoid my own shadow, tripped, fell over it, and like a drowning man struggling for shore crawled back on hands and knees to the wall. I leaned against the wall and cried. It was the first time in many years that I had cried. I remember noting, even in my extremity, the warmth of the tears on my cheeks and the salt taste when they reached my lips. Then I had a chill, and for a time shook as with an ague, abandoning the openness of the yard as too impossible a feat for one in my condition, still shaking with the chill. Crouching close to the protecting wall, my hands touching it, I started to skirt the yard. Then it was, somewhere along, that the guard Thurston espied me. I saw him. Distorted by my bleared eyes, a huge, well-fed monster, rushing upon me with incredible speed out of the remote distance. Possibly, at that moment, he was 20 feet away. He weighed 170 pounds. The struggle between us can be easily imagined, but somewhere in that brief struggle it was claimed that I struck him on the nose with my fist to such purpose as to make that organ bleed. At any rate, being a lifer, and the penalty in California for battery by a lifer being death, I was so found guilty by a jury which could not ignore the asseverations of the guard Thurston and the rest of the prison hangdogs that testified, and I was so sentenced by a judge who could not ignore the law as spread plainly on the statute book. I was well pummeled by Thurston, and all the way back up that prodigious stairway I was roundly kicked, punched, and cuffed by the horde of trustees and guards who got in one another's way in their zeal to assist him. Heavens! If his nose did bleed, the probability is that some of his own kind were guilty of causing it in the confusion of the scuffle. I shouldn't care if I were responsible for it myself, save that it is so pitiful a thing for which to hang a man. I have just had a talk with the man on shift of my death watch. A little less than a year ago, Jake Oppenheimer occupied this same death cell on the road to the gallows which I will tread tomorrow. This man was one of the death watch on Jake. He is an old soldier. He chews tobacco constantly, and untidily, for his gray beard and mustache are stained yellow. He is a widower, with 14 living children, all married, and is the grandfather of 31 living grandchildren, and the great-grandfather of 4 younglings, all girls. It was like pulling teeth to extract such information. He is a queer old codger, of a low order of intelligence. That is why, I fancy, he has lived so long and fathered so numerous a progeny. His mind must have crystallized 30 years ago. His ideas are none of them later than that vintage. He rarely says more than yes and no to me. It is not because he is surly. He has no ideas to utter. I don't know, when I live again, but what one incarnation such as his would be a nice vegetative existence in which to rest up ere I go star roving again. But to go back, I must take a line in which to tell, after I was hustled and bustled, kicked, and punched, up that terrible stairway by Thurston and the rest of the prison dogs, of the infinite relief of my narrow cell when I found myself back in solitary. It was all so safe, so secure. I felt like a lost child returned home again. I loved those very walls that I had so hated for 5 years. All that kept the vastness of space, like a monster, from pouncing upon me were those good stout walls of mine, close to hand on every side. Agoraphobia is a terrible affliction. I have had little opportunity to experience it, but from that little I can only conclude that hanging is a far easier matter. I have just had a hearty laugh. The prison doctor, a likable chap, has just been in to have a yarn with me, incidentally to proffer me his good offices in the matter of dope. Of course I declined his proposition to shoot me so full of morphine through the night that tomorrow I would not know, when I marched to the gallows, whether I was coming or going. But the laugh. It was just like Jake Oppenheimer. I can see the lean keenness of the man as he strung the reporters with his deliberate bull which they thought involuntary. It seems, his last morning, breakfast finished, encased in the shirt without a collar, that the reporters, assembled for his last word in his cell, asked him for his views on capital punishment. Who says we have more than the slightest veneer of civilization coated over our raw savagery when a group of living men can ask such a question of a man about to die and whom they are to see die? But Jake was ever game. Gentlemen, he said, I hope to live to see the day when capital punishment is abolished. I have lived many lives through the long ages. Man, the individual, has made no moral progress in the past 10,000 years. I affirm this absolutely. The difference between an unbroken colt and the patient draft horse is purely a difference of training. Training is the only moral difference between the man of today and the man of 10,000 years ago. Under his thin skin of morality which he has had polished onto him, he is the same savage that he was 10,000 years ago. Morality is a social fund, an accretion through the painful ages. The newborn child will become a savage unless it is trained, polished, by the abstract morality that has been so long accumulating. Thou shalt not kill Piffle. They are going to kill me tomorrow morning. Thou shalt not kill Piffle. In the shipyards of all civilized countries they are laying today the keels of dreadnoughts and of super-dreadnoughts. Dear friends, I who am about to die, salute you with Piffle. I ask you, what finer morality is preached today than was preached by Christ, by Buddha, by Socrates and Plato, by Confucius and whoever was the author of the Mahabharata? Good Lord, 50,000 years ago, in our totem families, our women were cleaner, our family and group relations more rigidly right. I must say that the morality we practiced in those old days was a finer morality than is practiced today. Don't dismiss this thought hastily. Think of our child labor, of our police graft and our political corruption, of our food adulteration and of our slavery of the daughters of the poor. When I was a son of the mountain and a son of the bull, prostitution had no meaning. We were clean, I tell you. We did not dream such depths of depravity. Yet, so are all the lesser animals of today clean. It required man, with his imagination, aided by his mastery of matter, to invent the deadly sins. The lesser animals, the other animals, are incapable of sin. I read hastily back through the many lives of many times and many places. I have never known cruelty more terrible, nor so terrible, as the cruelty of our prison system of today. I have told you what I have endured in the jacket and in solitary in the first decade of this 20th century after Christ. In the old days we punished drastically and killed quickly. We did it because we so desired, because of whim, if you so please. But we were not hypocrites. We did not call upon press and pulpit and university to sanction us in our willfulness of savagery. What we wanted to do we went and did, on our legs upstanding, and we faced all reproof and censure on our legs upstanding, and did not hide behind the skirts of classical economists and bourgeois philosophers, nor behind the skirts of subsidized preachers, professors, and editors. Why, goodness me, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 5 years ago, in these United States, assault and battery was not a civil capital crime. But this year, the year of our Lord 1913, in the state of California, they hanged Jake Oppenheimer for such an offense, and tomorrow, for the civil capital crime of punching a man on the nose, they are going to take me out and hang me. Query, doesn't it require a long time for the ape and the tiger to die? When such statutes are spread on the statute book of California in the 1913th year after Christ. Lord, Lord, they only crucified Christ. They have done far worse to Jake Oppenheimer and me. As Ed Morel once rapped to me with his knuckles, the worst possible use you can put a man to is to hang him. No, I have little respect for capital punishment. Not only is it a dirty game, degrading to the hangdogs who personally perpetrate it for a wage, but it is degrading to the Commonwealth that tolerates it, votes for it, and pays the taxes for its maintenance. Capital punishment is so silly, so stupid, so horribly unscientific. To be hanged by the neck until dead is society's quaint phraseology. Morning is come my last morning. I slept like a babe throughout the night. I slept so peacefully that once the death watch got a fright. He thought I had suffocated myself in my blankets. The poor man's alarm was pitiful. His bread and butter was at stake. Had it truly been so, it would have meant a black mark against him, perhaps discharge, and the outlook for an unemployed man is bitter just at present. They tell me that Europe began liquidating 2 years ago, and that now the United States has begun. That means either a business crisis or a quiet panic, and that the armies of the unemployed will be large. Next winter, the bread line's long. I have had my breakfast. It seemed a silly thing to do, but I ate it heartily. The warden came with a quart of whiskey. I presented it to Murderers Row with my compliments. The warden, poor man, is afraid, if I be not drunk, that I shall make a mess of the function and cast reflection on his management. They have put on me the shirt without a collar. It seems I am a very important man this day. Quite a lot of people are suddenly interested in me. The doctor has just gone. He has taken my pulse. I asked him to. It is normal. I write these random thoughts, and, a sheet at a time, they start on their secret way out beyond the walls. I am the calmest man in the prison. I am like a child about to start on a journey. I am eager to be gone, curious for the new places I shall see. This fear of the lesser death is ridiculous to one who has gone into the dark so often and lived again. The warden with a quart of champagne. I have dispatched it down Murderers Row. Queer, isn't it, that I am so considered this last day? It must be that these men who are to kill me are themselves afraid of death. To quote Jake Oppenheimer, I, who am about to die, must seem to them something god-awful. Ed Morel has just sent word in to me. They tell me he has paced up and down all night outside the prison wall. Being an ex-convict, they have red-taped him out of seeing me to say goodbye. Savages. I don't know. Possibly just children. I'll wager most of them will be afraid to be alone in the dark tonight after stretching my neck. But Ed Morel's message, my hand is in yours, old pal. I know. You'll swing off game. The reporters have just left. I'll see them next, and last time, from the scaffold, ere the hangman hides my face in the black cap. They will be looking curiously sick. Queer young fellows. Some show that they have been drinking. 2 or 3 look sick with foreknowledge of what they have to witness. It seems easier to be hanged than to look on. My last lines. It seems I am delaying the procession. My cell is quite crowded with officials and dignitaries. They are all nervous. They want it over. Without a doubt, some of them have dinner engagements. I am really offending them by writing these few words. The priest has again preferred his request to be with me to the end. The poor man, why should I deny him that solace? I have consented, and he now appears quite cheerful. Such small things make some men happy. I could stop and laugh for a hearty 5 minutes, if they were not in such a hurry. Here I close. I can only repeat myself. There is no death. Life is spirit, and spirit cannot die. Only the flesh dies and passes, ever a crawl with the chemic ferment that informs it, ever plastic, ever crystallizing, only to melt into the flux and to crystallize into fresh and diverse forms that are ephemeral and that melt back into the flux. Spirit alone endures and continues to build upon itself through successive and endless incarnations as it works upward toward the light. What shall I be when I live again? I wonder. I wonder. End of the Project Gutenberg ebook. The jacket, the Star Rover. Updated editions will replace the previous one. The old editions will be renamed. Creating the works from print editions not protected by U.S. copyright law means that no one owns a United States copyright in these works. So the Foundation, and you, can copy and distribute it in the United States without permission and without paying copyright royalties. Special rules, set forth in the General Terms of Use part of this license, apply to copying and distributing Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works. To protect the Project Gutenberg trademark concept and trademark. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark and may not be used if you charge for an ebook, except by following the terms of the trademark license, including paying royalties for use of the Project Gutenberg trademark. If you do not charge anything for copies of this ebook, complying with the trademark license is very easy. You may use this ebook for nearly any purpose, such as creation of derivative works, reports, performances, and research. Project Gutenberg ebooks may be modified and printed and given away. You may do practically anything in the United States with ebooks not protected by U.S. copyright law. Redistribution is subject to the trademark license, especially commercial redistribution. Start, full license. The full Project Gutenberg license. Please read this before you distribute or use this work. To protect the Project Gutenberg trademark mission of promoting the free distribution of electronic works, by using or distributing this work, or any other work associated in any way with the phrase Project Gutenberg, you agree to comply with all the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark license available with this file or online at www.gutenberg.org/license. Section 1. General Terms of Use and Redistributing Project Gutenberg Trademark. Electronic Works. 1.a. By reading or using any part of this Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work, you indicate that you have read, understand, agree to, and accept all the terms of this license and intellectual property trademark/copyright agreement. If you do not agree to abide by all the terms of this agreement, you must cease using and return or destroy all copies of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works in your possession. If you paid a fee for obtaining a copy of or access to a Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work and you do not agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement, you may obtain a refund from the person or entity to whom you paid the fee as set forth in paragraph 1.e.8. 1.b Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark. It may only be used on or associated in any way with an electronic work by people who agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement. There are a few things that you can do with most Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works, even without complying with the full terms of this agreement. See paragraph 1.c below. There are a lot of things you can do with Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works if you follow the terms of this agreement and help preserve free future access to Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works. See paragraph 1.e below. 1.c. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the Foundation or PGLOF, owns a compilation copyright in the collection of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works. Nearly all the individual works in the collection are in the public domain in the United States. If an individual work is unprotected by copyright law in the United States and you are located in the United States, we do not claim a right to prevent you from copying, distributing, performing, displaying or creating derivative works based on the work as long as all references to Project Gutenberg are removed. Of course, we hope that you will support the Project Gutenberg trademark mission of promoting free access to electronic works by freely sharing Project Gutenberg trademark works in compliance with the terms of this agreement for keeping the Project Gutenberg trademark name associated with the work. You can easily comply with the terms of this agreement by keeping this work in the same format with its attached full Project Gutenberg trademark license when you share it without charge with others. 1.d. The copyright laws of the place where you are located also govern what you can do with this work. Copyright laws in most countries are in a constant state of change. If you are outside the United States, check the laws of your country in addition to the terms of this agreement before downloading, copying, displaying, performing, distributing or creating derivative works based on this work or any other Project Gutenberg trademark work. The Foundation makes no representations concerning the copyright status of any work in any country other than the United States. 1.e Unless you have removed all references to Project Gutenberg. 1.e.1. The following sentence, with active links to, or other immediate access to, the full Project Gutenberg trademark license must appear prominently whenever any copy of a Project Gutenberg trademark work, any work on which the phrase Project Gutenberg appears, or with which the phrase Project Gutenberg is associated, is accessed, displayed, performed, viewed, copied, or distributed. This ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere in the United States and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at www.gutenberg.org. If you are not located in the United States, you will have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. 1.e.2. If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work is derived from texts not protected by U.S. copyright law, does not contain a notice indicating that it is posted with permission of the copyright holder, the work can be copied and distributed to anyone in the United States without paying any fees or charges. If you are redistributing or providing access to a work with the phrase Project Gutenberg associated with or appearing on the work, you must comply either with the requirements of paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 or obtain permission for the use of the work and the Project Gutenberg trademark as set forth in paragraphs 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.3. if an individual Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work is posted with the permission of the copyright holder, your use and distribution must comply with both paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 and any additional terms imposed by the copyright holder. Additional terms will be linked to the Project Gutenberg trademark license for all works posted with the permission of the copyright holder found at the beginning of this work. 1.e.4. Do not unlink or detach or remove the full Project Gutenberg trademark license terms from this work, or any files containing a part of this work or any other work associated with Project Gutenberg trademark. 1.e.5. Do not copy, display, perform, distribute or redistribute this electronic work, or any part of this electronic work, without prominently displaying the sentence set forth in paragraph 1.e.1 with active links or immediate access to the full terms of the Project Gutenberg trademark license. 1.e.6. You may convert to and distribute this work in any binary, compressed, marked up, non-proprietary or proprietary form, including any word processing or hypertext form. However, if you provide access to or distribute copies of a Project Gutenberg trademark work in a format other than plain vanilla ASCII or other format used in the official version posted on the official Project Gutenberg trademark website, www.gutenberg.org, you must, at no additional cost, fee, or expense to the user, provide a copy, a means of exporting a copy, or a means of obtaining a copy upon request, of the work in its original plain vanilla ASCII or other form. Any alternate format must include the full Project Gutenberg trademark license as specified in paragraph 1.e.1. 1.e.7. Do not charge a fee for access to, viewing, displaying, performing, copying, or distributing any Project Gutenberg trademark works, unless you comply with paragraph 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.8. You may charge a reasonable fee for copies of or providing access to or distributing Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works, provided that you pay a royalty fee of 20% of the gross profits you derive from the use of Project Gutenberg trademark works calculated using the method you already used to calculate your applicable taxes. The fee is owed to the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark, but he has agreed to donate royalties under this paragraph to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Royalty payments must be paid within 60 days following each date on which you prepare, or are legally required to prepare, your periodic tax returns. Royalty payments should be clearly marked as such and sent to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation at the address specified in Section 4, Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. You provide a full refund of any money paid by a user who notifies you in writing, or by email, within 30 days of receipt that he does not agree to the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark license. You must require such a user to return or destroy all copies of the works possessed in a physical medium and discontinue all use of and all access to other copies of Project Gutenberg trademark works. You provide, in accordance with paragraph 1.f.3, a full refund of any money paid for a work or a replacement copy, if a defect in the electronic work is discovered and reported to you within 90 days of receipt of the work. You comply with all other terms of this agreement for free distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark works. 1.e.9. If you wish to charge a fee or distribute a Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work or group of works on different terms than are set forth in this agreement, you must obtain permission in writing From the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the manager of the Project Gutenberg Trademark. Contact the foundation as set forth in section 3 below. 1.f 1.f.1 Project Gutenberg volunteers and employees expend considerable effort to identify, do copyright research on, transcribe and proofread works not protected by U.S. copyright law in creating the Project Gutenberg Trademark Collection. Despite these efforts, Project Gutenberg Trademark electronic works, and the medium on which they may be stored, may contain defects, such as, but not limited to, incomplete, inaccurate, or corrupt data, transcription errors, a copyright or other intellectual property infringement, a defective or damaged disk or other medium, a computer virus, or computer codes that damage or cannot be read by your equipment. 1.f.2 Limited warranty, disclaimer of damages, except for the right of replacement or refund described in paragraph 1.f.3, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark, and any other party distributing a Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work under this agreement, disclaim all liability to you for damages, costs, and expenses, including legal fees. You agree that you have no remedies for negligence, strict liability, breach of warranty or breach of contract except those provided in paragraph 1.f.3. You agree that the foundation, the trademark owner, and any distributor under this agreement will not be liable to you for actual, direct, indirect, consequential, punitive or incidental damages even if you give notice of the possibility of such damage. 1.f.3 Limited right of replacement or refund, if you discover a defect in this electronic work within 90 days of receiving it, you can receive a refund of the money, if any, you paid for it by sending a written explanation to the person you received the work from. If you received the work on a physical medium, you must return the medium with your written explanation. The person or entity that provided you with the defective work may elect to provide a replacement copy in lieu of a refund. If you received the work electronically, the person or entity providing it to you may choose to give you a second opportunity to receive the work electronically in lieu of a refund. If the second copy is also defective, you may demand a refund in writing, without further opportunities to fix the problem. 1.f.4 Except for the limited right of replacement or refund set forth in paragraph 1.f.3, this work is provided to you as is, with no other warranties of any kind, express or implied, including but not limited to warranties of merchantability or fitness for any purpose. 1.f.5 Some states do not allow disclaimers of certain implied warranties or the exclusion or limitation of certain types of damages. If any disclaimer or limitation set forth in this agreement violates the law of the state applicable to this agreement, the agreement shall be interpreted to make the maximum disclaimer or limitation permitted by the applicable state law. The invalidity or unenforceability of any provision of this agreement shall not void the remaining provisions. 1.f.6 Indemnity. You agree to indemnify and hold the foundation, the trademark owner, any agent or employee of the foundation, anyone providing copies of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works in accordance with this agreement, and any volunteers associated with the production, promotion, and distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works, harmless from all liability, costs, and expenses, including legal fees, that arise directly or indirectly from any of The following which you do or cause to occur: a. Distribution of this or any Project Gutenberg trademark work, b. Alteration, modification, or additions or deletions to any Project Gutenberg trademark work, and c. Any defect you cause. Section 2. Information about the mission of Project Gutenberg trademark. Project Gutenberg trademark is synonymous with the free distribution of electronic works in formats readable by the widest variety of computers, including obsolete, old, middle-aged, and new computers. It exists because of the efforts of hundreds of volunteers and donations from people in all walks of life. Volunteers and financial support to provide volunteers with the assistance they need are critical to reaching Project Gutenberg trademark's goals and ensuring that the Project Gutenberg trademark collection will remain freely available for generations to come. In 2001, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation was created to provide a secure and permanent future for Project Gutenberg trademark and future generations. To learn more about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation and how your efforts and donations can help, see Sections 3 and 4 and the Foundation information page at www.gutenberg.org. Section 3. Information about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation is a non-profit 501(c)(3) educational corporation organized under the laws of the State of Mississippi and granted tax-exempt status by the Internal Revenue Service. The Foundation's IN or Federal Tax Identification number is 64-6221541. Contributions to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation are tax-deductible to the full extent permitted by U.S. federal laws and your state's laws. The Foundation's business office is located at 809 North 1500 West, Salt Lake City, Utah 841-16801-596-1887. Email contact links and up-to-date contact information can be found at the Foundation's website and official page at www.gutenberg.org/contact. Section 4. Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Project Gutenberg trademark depends upon and cannot survive without widespread public support and donations to carry out its mission of increasing the number of public domain and licensed works that can be freely distributed in machine-readable form accessible by the widest array of equipment, including outdated equipment. Many small donations, $1 to $5,000, are particularly important to maintaining tax-exempt status with the IRS. The Foundation is committed to complying with the laws regulating charities and charitable donations in all 50 states of the United States. Compliance requirements are not uniform and it takes a considerable effort, much paperwork, and many fees to meet and keep up with these requirements. We do not solicit donations in locations where we have not received written confirmation of compliance. To send donations or determine the status of compliance for any particular state, visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. While we cannot and do not solicit contributions from states where we have not met the solicitation requirements, we know of no prohibition against accepting unsolicited donations from donors in such states who approach us with offers to donate. International donations are gratefully accepted, but we cannot make any statements concerning tax treatment of donations received from outside the United States. U.S. laws alone swamp our small staff. Please check the Project Gutenberg web pages for current donation methods and addresses. Donations are accepted in a number of other ways, including checks, online payments, and credit card donations. To donate, please visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. Section 5. General information about Project Gutenberg Trademark Electronic Works. Professor Michael S. Hart was the originator of the project. Gutenberg trademark concept of a library of electronic works that could be freely shared with anyone. For 40 years, he produced and distributed Project Gutenberg trademark ebooks with only a loose network of volunteer support. Project Gutenberg trademark ebooks are often created from several printed editions, all of which are confirmed as not protected by copyright in the US unless a copyright notice is included. Thus, we do not necessarily keep ebooks in compliance with any particular paper edition. Most people start at our website, which has the main PG search facility, www.gutenberg.org. This website includes information about Project Gutenberg trademark, including how to make donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, how to help produce our new ebooks, and how to subscribe to our email newsletter to hear about new ebooks. The jacket. The Star Rover. Contents. Chapter I. Chapter 2. Chapter 3. Chapter 4. Chapter V. Chapter 6. Chapter 7. Chapter 8. Chapter 9. Chapter X. Chapter 11. Chapter 12. Chapter 13. Chapter 14. Chapter 15. Chapter 16. Chapter 17. Chapter 18. Chapter 19. Chapter XX. Chapter XXI. Chapter XXII. The full Project Gutenberg license.